Well, hello there. It's a weekend update. I'm Jim Harrington.
And I am Bill Knight. Well, the weekend. The fan is turned on and the left is using it as usual.
Yes, usually on the weekend when you think things should be quiet and all should be peaceful, it isn't. A lot of things are thrown into the news cycle like on Friday night, and then they take the weekend to percolate, and the media just loves. They love to take a story on a Friday and embellish it. The same story you hear Friday afternoon, by the time you hear it on the programs like Meet the Press or Face the Nation on Sunday, they're much greater and much more interesting. Go ahead.
Well, I think what they do is orchestrated, to where they want to create chaos and divide in the on the right. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene. You didn't know it, but I just saw it because the mainstream put it out there. Apparently, she did a post on the X. It's there. I saw it, where she's a little bit frustrated. She goes, "Hey, I represent the MAGA movement. I am the right, and these are the things I campaigned on. Why aren't these things being done?" Well, everybody's a little frustrated, but you got to understand, Marjorie, is that you are facing a mountain of left resistance. They're hidden everywhere. So everything that you do is, going to be blocked. She was upset over the Ukraine deal with the precious or the rare earth minerals. We got it here. Why don't we do it here? We want to do it here. You mentioned, why can't we do both?
Right.
Which I think is what Trump wants. But let's look at what's in the Ukraine. If we don't mine it, then who gets it? China?
Well, I said by making a deal with Ukraine, we've said to the Ukraine, we have a reason, an investment reason, to make sure that you win this war. Because if you lose the war, all of those rare earth minerals are going to go to where? Russia. Russia will control those minerals, and we'll see none of it. By putting a deal together right now, we've said, okay, we want you to win. We want you to walk away with an agreement you can live with, and it'll be profitable at the end for you and for us. By the way, Marjorie, I was thinking when we talked about this, Bill, she's a very important representative down in Washington.
She is.
But she's one small cog in that big wheel of government. She doesn't seem to realize that. I think she kind of lets it go to her head sometimes. President Trump probably never talks to her about anything. You would, people who are on the outside looking in would probably say, well, she's Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she probably bumps into the president all the time. I'll bet you she hasn't seen the president 2 or 3 times, if that many, since he was sworn in, because he's at the other end of town, and he's doing a lot of stuff that requires his full attention. He's traveling around the world. Look where he was. I think he's down in Mar-a-Lago right now. And you were talking about the weekend news programs. He was he recorded. I don't know why he does this, but he's fearless when he talks to the opposition. He was talking to Kristen Welker from NBC, Meet the Press. I guess they taped it yesterday for this weekend's program, and he has no problem sitting down with somebody who he knows is going to be adversarial and going toe-to-toe with her. Listen to what he said yesterday.
Some people on Wall Street have expressed concerns that the possibility of a recession is increasing. And I want to know what you think about that. Are you comfortable with the country potentially dipping into a recession for a period of time if you are able to achieve your long-term goals?
Well, you say some people on Wall Street say, well, I tell you something else. Some people on Wall Street say that we're going to have the greatest economy in history. Why don't you talk about them? Because some people on Wall Street say this is the greatest thing ever happened.
That's what I'm getting at, though. It's the same question.
Yeah, there are many people on Wall Street say this is going to be the greatest windfall ever happened.
You got to love it. Usually people are knocked back on their heels with questions like that. With Trump, he just turned it right around on her and said, hey, some people say it's going to be a wonderful economy. By the way, it's that some people, unknown, people who, reliable sources, people who want to keep their anonymity, you don't even know whether they're real people. I think that the reporters use that technique to inject their personal opinion. Some people believe the economy is going to collapse. really, that some people may be the reporter who's saying that, you know? And Trump,
they've got an agenda.
They do
are
indeed.
Some people.
Yep.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and there's more to it than that, because I was sitting there and I had mentioned to you just a conspiracy theory that was thrown in my face, and I was going like, what? The left has got conspiracy theories? I thought only the right had conspiracy theories.
Yes.
And then I was really surprised that there are at least 100 out there. And these conspiracy theories drive news stories. And then I said, if I were to sit there and hadn't known better and heard these conspiracies, I would be, especially if we're on the left, I'd be mad as hell. Just like, we hear things on the right. You're mad as hell.
Right.
So it made me wonder, is there some other something that's out there in the dark that's not left or not right, but is sitting there just putting this stuff out there, manipulating both sides so that we fight. We've got our eye off the ball, and we're on this hate process, and nothing is getting done that's productive for the country.
We know, as a matter of fact, that if you listen to many different independent news sources on certain days, you'll hear them say key phrases that are identical. You might hear MSNBC say something, and then you'll turn the channel and CBS will say something, and they'll say the same phrase. And you'll say, how can that be? Can that be coincidence? Then you turn the channel, and there's CNN, and CNN says the same phrase. What happens, a lot of people don't realize this, but there are people who work all night long for these different organizations, mainly the DNC and stuff like that, and they will put out talking points that they want the media to use. They want people to keep throwing these points, and it's not just the media. You'll hear it used by people, reporters during conversation. You'll hear it done by politicians like Schumer and Pelosi using the same phrases. They all throw. Do you remember, it goes back to about 10 years ago during a presidential campaign, the key word that they were throwing out was gravitas. It didn't have gravitas. All of us, and most people had never heard that term, Most people, but all of a sudden the media said, we should use this. It doesn't carry any gravitas. Suddenly, that word was being used by all the networks, all the opposition politicians, and it was like a word we were all supposed to be impressed by. They do it all the time, Bill. There is a deep state.
There is a deep state. Now, I will say, you can always tell if it comes from the right or from the left. And it's linguistics. Now, the party that uses linguistics, we're smarter than they are. Here's a word we can use, and it can be meant to mean this or that, gravitas. You're not going to find that on the conservative side because, we're happy to have breakfast and look forward to lunch. We're very one-tracked. But over on the left, there's people out there going, okay, we're going to do this. And they take that and
What's
run with
interesting,
it.
Bill, is that for the longest time, the Democrats were labeled the party of the worker, the party of the common man. Common people don't say gravitas and stuff like that. They just don't. It somewhere along the line over the last 50 years, the parties, their descriptives switched, and it never became more apparent than when Trump got on the scene. When Trump got on the scene, here's this billionaire. They call him the blue-collar billionaire because he could walk into a factory and they all would gather around him. He could relate to the guy on the assembly line. He turned the whole narrative around on the left. And, instead of fighting him, they flipped too, and they became the party of sophisticates, the arts, the party of the elite. That's why you have all of the Hollywood stars and all of the people who are making millions, by the way. These Hollywood actors who throw their 2 cents in like it's important, oh, well, I can't be with Trump. He's, MAGA. And they're going out and getting into their Rolls Royces. And by the way, nobody flaunts their wealth more than the people in Hollywood. Because most of the time, they're nouveau riche. That means they're new rich. They are people who have acquired wealth relatively quickly, and they came usually from either middle class or nothing at all. So when you got it, you flaunt it, and they turn around, Bill, and they throw it out at they pretend that they're still one of the people, and they're not.
They never were. Yeah, they take this education as a class thing, and that's how it's like a club, and they do that, and they've taken away they've taken away the sword of the middle class, and that was our ability to make and produce things. That was what America was built on: the middle class people and the workers, and that's gone. So I do want to invite everybody that's listening right now to like and share the program.
Okay, we're back, and we're talking about the different class systems and the way the parties, by the way, have flip-flopped in their representation. That used to be the Democrats were blue-collar, assembly line, the average man, party of the people, and the Republicans were the business class, rich millionaires, and how in the last 50 years that's flipped around, especially since Trump, the billionaire, got into office, a guy who absolutely can relate to the common guy. Don't know why. I think it's because he doesn't take himself terribly seriously. I really think Trump is he has his feet firmly on the ground. Oh, he likes all the toys that come along with his wealth, but he also can appreciate the guy in the assembly line who makes a terrific product,
Because he's kind of a grassroots guy. He doesn't mind getting his hands dirty and getting out there because that is what America's about and what built America. But there is a class envy type thing that goes on. Well, I have a degree from Harvard, and I can't get my hands dirty. But, in that class envy, there's like a rule. The man who dies with the most toys wins. And you also, one of the things that kind of makes you feel like you've really arrived is that you ascend higher and higher up this pedestal of life. And there are people that get farther and farther down below. You've got to have losers so you feel like more of a winner. And so they take away what we have and they give it to somebody else, but they still have their hands in it to where they make their money. Damn the rest.
It's interesting. We're talking about winners and losers and money and nouveau riche and stuff like that. And Michelle Obama was doing an interview talking about how expensive, and we all should feel sorry for her, how expensive it is to really live in the White House. This is honest to God, folks. She was literally complaining about the cost of her being first lady. Listen.
It's expensive to live in the White House. Many people don't know. I mean, much is not covered. You're paying for every bit of food that you eat. You're not paying for housing and the staff in it, but everything, even travel. If you're not traveling with the president, if your kids are coming on a Bright Star, which is the first lady's plane, we had to pay for their travel to be on the plane. It is an expensive proposition, and you're running for 2 years and not earning an income. So all of that was in my mind. How would we manage this? My fears came from the fact that I thought he could win, but I knew he had it in him to make this happen.
Wow, you gotta love it. So she's complaining about the expense of flying in her own private jet. You would think that would be free, right? No, you got to pay for your kids. But what she's not telling you, folks, is that she gets paid a salary, and there's also probably cost of living expenses that they get covered. So yeah, they're probably paying for it on one hand, but they're getting a check on the other. And by the way, she also probably has money that she can tap from Barack's campaign. She didn't have to go sell lemonade in front of the White House to pay for this stuff.
No, and you know what? If what she said was true, why did her net worth go up instead of down?
That's
we're
true.
Not working, we're paying for all this stuff.
Flag on the play. That's a good point. We got to slow down here and stop and take a look at this. What he just said. She went in and they were worth X amount of dollars. When Barack and her left office 8 years later, they were multimillionaires. And she's complaining about paying for her kids' food on her private jet. Which is paid for by the federal government. And I didn't realize this, Bill. I didn't realize this, but when she flies wherever she wanted to fly to on a whim, by the way, she's the first lady, and I want to go out and see that premiere in Los Angeles next week. I'm going to take the Bright Star. Say what? Yeah, I'm going to take the government jet that is allocated just for the first lady. I didn't know that. I did know that the government had a fleet of planes for people in the cabinet. Like if you were a Secretary of State, you had to fly somewhere. You called and say, "I'm flying to Germany next week. I need a jet ready." And they say, "Yes, sir. The jet will be ready at Andrews Air Force Base, and we'll take you, no problem." But apparently, there's one that's designated just for the first lady. I thought that was pretty interesting. And she's complaining because she has to pay for the meals for her kids. Hey, listen, you can do what a lot of people do. Stop at McDonald's along the way, pick up a baggie to go, bring it on the plane.
A doggy bag.
Yeah, a doggy bag. You got all the stuff you need. Bring some toys. They can sit in the front of the plane, play with their toys.
See, I recall that they have an expense account. I mean, I have a family member that worked in a pretty high ranking area in the government, and when she traveled, wherever she traveled, it came with an expense account, and she wasn't the vice, the first lady.
Oh, so, yeah. Well, Mike, I think I told you, my cousin was in the cabinet of George Herbert Walker Bush in 1990, 91. He was the administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency. My first cousin. I'm not trying to say that to brag. He is my first cousin. He was in George Bush's cabinet. And I think I told you that one time his security almost arrested me for approaching him too quickly. But that's another story. But yeah, when he would go somewhere, for literally, he'd decide what's a business meeting. He'd decide where the meeting's going to be, and then he'd get on a plane, a government plane. They would fuel it up, and they'd fly him there. And they had expenses. It's the federal. Look at the waste that Doge has uncovered, right? They said yesterday $5 trillion, $5 trillion of unaccounted for money, meaning they did all this checking and this $5 trillion that doesn't have a receipt.
Yeah.
Doesn't that make you sick, Bill?
Well, there's a slush fund. And let's face it, Michelle's talking about, you got to pay for the kids and all of that. There is money that's allocated for that. It's called an expense account that you have. Now, if you wanted to go and take it on a willy-nilly private thing, there may be a cost for it. But here's how you can get around it. Now, you can't write a book while you're in the office. That's a no-no. You can't do anything to make money. However, you can sit there and go, when we get out of the office, I will do that book. And so they give you a retainer fee that you can get right now. That means you won't take it anywhere else. You've got this nice retainer fee. It's yours to spend, whether you do the book or not. And oh, by the way, it's got all the guarantees and the accoutrements that go with it after it's all over. So what she just said in that statement was a bold-faced lie. And
you know what else?
What else?
Let's say she's in Washington and she wants to go to a premiere in Los Angeles. All right. She's going to have to pay for it if she just takes a plane and goes out there with the kids. But if when she's out there, she stops into, I don't know, an office, some governmental office. And
it's a business
expense, then. It says, makes a 5-minute talk. It's a business trip. Exactly right. She's covered herself. It's now paid for, and she can go to that premiere.
Which she got tickets for free. Yep. Her press secretary called him. Michelle's going to be there and would love to go. Don't worry. She will be front row. No, she don't want to be up front. She wants to be up in the, in the elite press box.
Yeah, exactly.
And she would also recommend,
yes,
because I've heard it from good sources, that this is a good program, rated one of the best political programs, and she would even say that you should like and share it.
Actually, I would doubt that Michelle Obama would recommend our show, but it's
you never know.
An interesting way to go into a commercial break. Oh, my gosh. But so she She wants you to feel bad. That's probably a segment from one of her podcasts. She's big into podcasts now.
Hey, I hear it's not doing well. They talk about it, and she gets a lot of promos for it, but it's not doing what they wanted to do. They'll tell you otherwise.
I wonder if she's in the top 1% like we are.
I actually went and looked, and I didn't see her picture anywhere in the top
50?
500.
Really?
And that would be at least in the top 10%.
Wow.
So I'm like going, that's interesting.
Well, there's burnout. There's a burnout factor. A lot of people have kind of had it. And there's so many rumors going on around Michelle about her forthrightness, her honesty. And I'm not going to get into those rumors. I think most people who are listening to this program right now, they know what we're talking about. Okay? We just leave it at that. And look, that's her thing. It wouldn't bother me so much if she were actually what they're saying she is. But what does bother me more than anything is the fact that they lied. They would have. That's the whole thing. I don't care about anything else. I really don't, because people can live and let live. You go about your life, do what you want to do. What was it, John Lennon? Whatever gets you through the night. That's your business. But if you spent 8 years lying to us, frauding us, that bothers me more than anything else.
Yeah, and then you blame it on us that, these people are homophobes. No, I would venture to say that she is the homophobe. She's got a problem with it. Now, how deep down that problem goes, that's a whole different program and a different debate. But a lot of times the people that are pointing the fingers are the guilty party, and that's all I'm going to say.
Look at President Trump. Now they're calling him everything in the book. They call him Hitler, Nazi. He has Scott Bessent, who's openly gay, Treasury Secretary, very smart guy, doesn't make an issue out of it, doesn't go around flaunting his sexuality, just lives his life, does a heck of a job as Treasury Secretary, and President Trump doesn't care about his sexuality. Rich Grinnell, maybe one of the smartest guys in government, a really articulate guy, he's openly gay. He's also an aide-de-camp to President Trump. Trump, if anything, is the most understanding and accepting person ever to be in government.
Well, there are two types of everything you talk about, I guess, traits, human traits. There's somebody that they have a trait, and it's just their natural way of being, and they don't make a big deal about it. They go on just, being like you and me, we're all participants in this thing called life. But there are people that have to be a little more flamboyant about it. And I don't like to use that word, at all, but there's no other way to describe it.
They brag about their sexuality, right? Literally.
Well, I actually did some research. I was going, why is it that some people have to push the boundaries? And I did it through AI. And because I said, I want to get, not my interpretation or their interpretation, but it turns out there are people that are of different persuasions, but they just blend in because they would blend in whether they were or they weren't. Every day's a normal day. It's normal to them, so it's normal to me because I know and it's acceptable. But then there are the people that want to sit there and throw it out there in their manner of speaking, their voice, their dressing, their actions. And you're going, boy, did they get the bug? No, they got the bug because it's called attitude. And they want to rub it in your face. And now that I have a problem with.
Yeah.
It's not normal.
I agree. And there are people like that. There are people who it doesn't define them. Like Rick Grinnell and Scott Bessent, their sexuality doesn't define them as a person. They're a well-rounded person with a lot more to offer than just their sexuality. I would venture to say that the other people, and I'm not going to mention any names, but we all know, especially those who were in the Obama and Biden administrations, that was basically all they had to offer.
It's an entitlement, they think.
Yeah, exactly. How many times did we hear the press secretary say she was the first black, openly gay press secretary. How does that qualify for anything, especially as a press secretary? I would be more concerned with your press credentials. Were you a reporter? Do you know how to answer the questions? Are you well versed? I don't care about.
I don't want to hear about your bedroom antics. I just want to know that you can do the job. And that's that.
That's
your
where
personal life is your personal life.
And that's where Trump is coming from, Bill. Trump is coming from the area that we come from. He was a successful businessman for 50 years. The guy was successful, and he dealt with every kind of person. He met them all, and he had some of them working for him, I'm sure, on his staff, because he wasn't concerned with their sexuality. He was concerned with their business performance, how well they did on the job. And they did, most of the times, they did phenomenally on the job. You and I come from a business. I can talk about this. I'm not going to mention any names, but for the longest time, I worked in broadcasting with guys who had a different sexuality than me. And it was a time, by the way, when most of them had to keep it quiet back in the 70s and 80s, but everybody who worked with them knew. It wasn't like a secret if you worked in the same building with them. And after a little bit, I'm talking about maybe the novelty of it. Oh, he really? And after a while, you forgot about it. You just went about your business, did what you had to do on your program, and you accepted them for the person they were, if they didn't flaunt it, and they never did. The people I worked with who had that proclivity never did. They never talked about who they were dating or what they were doing. That was personal and private, just like most sexuality is supposed to be. Heterosexuality should be private. If you're walking into a business and saying, "Boy, I got lucky last night. Hey, that girl looks really," you're going to get yourself in trouble.
Yeah. It's nobody's business, but what you do in your private life is your business, unless it hurts somebody else or you're doing something that's just, and I don't want to say religiously wrong, because that's not where I'm going, but that is so vehemently wrong. Right. You're doing something,
if you're a pervert,
you shouldn't. Yeah, you're a pervert, or you're a thief, or you're right. You're doing something,
a pedophile
against
something,
a pedophile against somebody else's will. You're a thief. You're a stealer, and they're thieves and they're stealing too.
Yep. So anyway, it's interesting to hear Michelle Obama complain about how difficult it is and how expensive it is to live in the White House. She should have told Barack and said, "Hey, Barack, we're not doing this. It's just too expensive." But she didn't, and she never complained to anybody when she was walking in and out of that building whenever she wanted to. Mm-hmm. But anyway, that's how they do it on the left nowadays, unfortunately. Megyn Kelly sat down with Tulsi Gabbard. Did you hear about this? They were talking about certain things that are happening behind the scenes, especially with regard to that whole pandemic thing that we just went through not too long ago.
Oh, yes.
This is an interesting little segment. Megyn Kelly on her podcast with Tulsi Gabbard.
Reversed. So it's a lot of what's been found is already there. But the thing that we are working with Jay Bhattacharya, the new NIH director, on with, as well as Secretary Kennedy, is looking at the gain of function research that in the case of the Wuhan lab, as well as many of these other biolabs around the world, was actually U.S. funded and leads to this dangerous kind of research that in many examples has resulted in either a pandemic or some other major health crisis.
Well, let me ask you specifically, because we already know that EcoHealth Alliance was partnering with this Wuhan lab to do gain-of-function research.
That's right.
We just have never been able to have somebody say, it was that exact experiment that led to this COVID bug. But have we gotten there? What's the new thing that you're digging in on?
We are working on that with Jay Bhattacharya and look forward to being able to share that, hopefully very soon.
Okay.
That specific
link,
correct, between the gain of function research and what we saw with COVID-19.
I mean, that would be extraordinary, because just so the audience knows, if that's true, if it was Peter Daszak's research with the Wuhan so-called bat lady that caused this pandemic, then we did fund it. Then Anthony Fauci helped fund The pandemic.
The thing that he denied over and over and over to Senator Rand Paul's questioning.
That's right. Under oath.
Under oath, exactly. So is it any wonder that he sought a preemptive pardon for anything during a certain period of time by President Biden before he left office?
And then strong-armed and smeared people like Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, anybody who came out and said, I don't know if that's natural. This actually smacks of lab.
And the reason why this is so important is not just what happened in the past. It's because this gain-of-function research is happening in biolabs around the world. I got attacked, and I think you saw this. We've probably talked about it in your show before, when I warned against U.S.-funded biolabs in Ukraine when the Russia-Ukraine war kicked off for this very reason. Who knows what kinds of pathogens are in these labs, and if released, could create another COVID-like pandemic. And for that, I was called a Russian asset. You're, trumpeting Putin's talking points, all of this nonsense, simply for speaking the truth and stating facts that, by the way, are still on U.S. Embassy Ukraine's website today about how the U.S. has funded these biolabs in Ukraine. But my point is, in order to prevent another COVID-like pandemic or another major health incident that could affect us in the world, we have to end this gain-of-function research and provide the evidence that shows exactly why and how it's in our best interest, the American people's best interest, to bring about an end to it.
Can I just ask you one other question on that? Why did the intelligence community, why were they so reluctant to just say that? Under Joe Biden, they were split. The FBI eventually said, well, we kind of think it was a lab, and Department of Energy said lab. But then the other agencies were like, no, we think more natural origin, long past the point when it did not look like natural origin. They tested 80 or 90,000 animals. They never found this version of the virus. So what was going on with the intel community there?
It's a good question, and I don't have a specific answer to it, but I want to point to the contrast of how in some cases, they are very unwilling to come to express a view or a certain opinion on something. And in other cases, even if they don't have decisive or conclusive evidence per se, they're very quickly to come to an assumption. And this gets to the real heart of the challenge here, and the problems that we've seen is the politicization of intelligence to meet a certain objective or to influence a certain policy. And that is what has been the problem. This goes all the way back to why this organization was founded. When you look at the so-called intelligence that really was used to spur the Iraq regime change war, and look at what that has cost our country in lives, in treasure. Look at what it's cost the world. Look at what Iraq is today, now essentially a proxy of Iran, when Iraq, that would not have happened had that regime change war not occurred.
That's right.
So again, this is really what is at the heart of what needs to be addressed within the intelligence community, and why leadership matters so much.
Just as a reminder to our audience, you were a young 21-year-old.
You know what's really scary about that? I was listening to her talk. She is the 8th Director of National Intelligence. Think about it. Let that seep in for a second. She is the head of our national intelligence, okay? I think she's above the director of the CIA.
Right.
Yet she said, when she was being interviewed just now, well, they're not quick, the Central Intelligence Agency isn't quick to come to certain conclusions that seem obvious, and they're quick to come to conclusions that don't seem obvious, but politically expedient. And this is the lady who's supposed to be their boss saying this. And she said it's frustrating. They're actually, I guess, in the position where they can stonewall their political boss at the CIA.
Yeah. And, that gets back to, we originally talked about Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's upset. Everybody's upset because they're encountering the bureaucracy of the government. And, and the bureaucracy is deeper than what we think, and controlled by probably, we change our facial leader every 4 years, or theoretically every 4 years we get a chance to change it. Every 8 years, totally change it if we elect him twice. But there's a constant driving force, and that driving force has gotten darker and darker and darker over the years, and that's what you're up against.
So my question is, do we have time? Does Trump have time in the 3 years and 2/3 of a term, 2/3 of a year left to overcome this problem, or will he be stonewalled for his entire period of time in office?
Well, I would say if it was a building project, he was building a building, no matter what the obstacle, he could get it done. This, I think, if you got him by himself, and it's just you and him, one-on-one, he would probably say, biggest gamble I've ever taken.
Wow. Well,
that's my opinion.
Just look at the judiciary right now. They are stonewalling him. Mm-hmm. They are blocking him at every move. He'll come out with something like he did something yesterday. I think it was NPR, Corporation for Public Broadcasting, CPB. He pulled the funding on it. No sooner was the ink dry in the executive order that they were talking about taking him to court. You know that it's going to be challenged. I think he knew it was going to be challenged. He probably knew when he was thinking about it, it was going to be challenged.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my question to you is this. Is his goal to pull the funding on these organizations, or is his goal to get the left to show themselves their corruption?
Maybe a little of both, because I can see pulling the funding, but I can also see, you got to get them to whack-a-mole, stick their head out of the hole. But it's going to get worse before it can ever get better. How much worse? I don't know. And maybe that's some of the divide that's going on out there. People are going, these tariffs, this and that and this and that. Look, we don't want to deal with it because it's going to be painful. Well, it's going to be more painful if we leave it alone. At some point in time, they're going to tap all our resources, and then they're going to throw us out like the dirty wash water that we apparently are.
If we don't fix it now with this president, because I don't think there's ever going to be a more in-your-face president, a more gutsy guy than we have right now. I think most of the other guys who are, on the horizon to be future presidents, right or left, won't have the wherewithal, the desire to go toe-to-toe with the deep state like Trump does. I mean, look, they tried to blow his head off. They tried to take his head off, and that would be enough for a lot of people. A lot of people right there and then would have said, I'm done. I don't need this. I got billions of dollars, golf courses all over the world. I have more money than I'll ever need in multiple lifetimes. I'm not going to run.
Well, here's the problem. I'm not going to run. He made the mistake of running once and winning and doing things. And the one thing about the left, you look at Fetterman. He had certain stances on things that might have been considered on the conservative side.
Israel.
Israel. And they want his head on a platter. So you think they're mad at him. Wait until you see what they want to do with Trump. If Trump would sit there and say, you know what, I'm done. I'm going to step down as president. You're right, I'm wrong, and I'll just get out of the way and go my way. They would grab him right away, lock him up, and they would come up with 1,000 charges, and they would kill him before they prosecuted him.
All right, they're already throwing out the possibility of, and it's very subtle right now. You got to pay attention. But I've heard President Trump actually say the words of suspending habeas corpus.
Mm-hmm.
Just like it was almost like a feeler. He threw it out there during an interview. And I think a lot of reporters, because they're basically numbskulls, and I really mean that. I think when you get to talk to a lot of these reporters who are all caught up in their own self-importance, if you were to sit down and have coffee with them, a lot of them, they look good on camera. They comb their hair nicely, but they're stupid. They're really dumb, okay? They don't. If you sat down and said, well, tell me about habeas corpus. What is habeas corpus? They might look at you cross-eyed because they've never researched it. But he threw it out there, and I think he's going to do it. I think his only option right now, his only option to fix the system, because the judicial system is already showing itself to be corrupted. They are partisans. We heard a judge yesterday. I'm not going to go into it. They came to an agreement about Ashley Babbitt, and both sides agreed to the deal. They went into court, and the judge went nuts. The judge went ballistic. It was a Biden appointee judge. She wanted to have the case said in front of her courtroom, and they pulled the rug out from underneath her by coming to a settlement. And there's not much she could do, so she chastised both sides. Okay? She went after both sides. Now, the left, it's not so much the process. They want to be able to interfere. And they took that possibility away from her by coming to a settlement. And go ahead, you want to say something, Bill?
Well, no, I was going to, when you finish, I was going to say there's more to what's going on with the judicial system than meets the eye.
Well, all I was going to say was that you have he has no other option now that the judicial system has shown itself that he's going to suspend habeas corpus, and he's going to bypass a lot of the judiciary and their thumbs up, thumbs down routine. And that's going to be interesting because that's when they'll really call him a dictator. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, and we may find out if we're going down a path to where we no longer have a president. I mean, did you know that there were conferences going on in Puerto Rico?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, there was a Supreme Court justice who was down there. Yeah.
Did you hear what she? One of the things that she did, she took the bully pulpit there to attack Trump, but she urged her judicial colleagues to show raw courage to dispense justice without fear of the results. I urge you to keep going, or keep doing what is right for our country.
Of course she did.
To be determined.
She was appointed by Biden.
And I do believe that history will vindicate your service. The little Biden appointee.
Well, she is nothing more than a federal district circuit court judge, and she has a bigger gavel. She's a Supreme Court justice. I never thought she should be there. This is the problem. This is the problem, by the way, that the right in Congress have. They'll if a leftist president nominates a Supreme Court justice, the damn right, pardon me, but it's true. The right they just gavel her through. Like, okay, you can be. Conversely, if the conservative administration nominates a Supreme Court justice, the left does everything in its power to throw a roadblock in the way. Mm-hmm. And the right never learns. They never learn. Mm-hmm. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see. I think he's going to go suspend habeas corpus, and it would probably be. I'd be willing to bet you it happens within at the next 30 days. I think he's almost at that point now.
Well, he's teeing up now. I think, what is it, Tuesday, the day after Cinco de Mayo? I think he's supposed to do a video stream because everyone's going, what has he done? He's done nothing. Well, he's done a lot in the first 100 days. And they're going to stream a video, which the left will poo-poo and put down, about all the things he has done. And speaking of things done, if you like what we're doing, remember to like and share our program.
It's an interesting time in history. It really is, because, and we're living through it. People who lived through the Civil War, I don't really know whether they knew what a pivotal point in our history it was. Oh, it was bloody and it was upsetting and it was a bad time. But when you're living through something, sometimes it's like being in the middle of a roller coaster ride, maybe the best roller coaster ride in the world. When you're trying to hang on, when you're in the middle and you're hanging on to that car, you don't want to fall out. All you're concentrating on is finishing the ride. You don't think about the momentous occasion that you're living through. And I think we're living through a momentous occasion right now. I think that with this president and what's happening right now in our country, I think with the tariffs, and with all of the different things that he's presenting and all of the challenges he's running up against, I think it is absolutely it's a pivotal point, Bill. It's a pivotal point in our lives. You know, when Tulsi Gabbard was talking a little while ago with Megyn Kelly, I wanted to point this out. She mentioned the importance of those different biolabs. I don't know whether they're being given the whole story about those biolabs in Ukraine. There are over 40 biolabs sprinkled around the border area of Russia and Ukraine, and they're supposedly making the worst of the worst bioweapons, and we're told nothing. Just keep your mouth shut and go on.
COVID has roots in the United States, being down in the Research Triangle, down in Raleigh, and
down, also in Fort Detrick, Maryland, or something like that.
There, and I think up further northeast in with Harvard, Cambridge, and whatever it is.
Of course, yes.
Yes, but and the government blamed it on China. Now, this is the one case where China's going, hey, you gave us the virus. Yeah, they may have bungled it, but the interesting thing is, if you look at it and see everything that's going on, there was a hand in it from our government, the undertow of our government, and I really think it was put in place, and it's an old playbook. I'm not going to go into those details again, but this has been done before, and they were doing it again to sit there and make people sick so that they, A, couldn't vote, or B, they could use it as a Trump failure to address. And, because he was given misinformation about it. He had to go with what his team said,
Fauci.
The team that he inherited.
Yeah.
And it was all bogus. And so they said, Trump screwed this up, and Biden came in there. Well, let me tell you something, Biden, it was such a big screw up that you guys actually launched, that's now traceable, that you couldn't even recover from it properly.
Well, who was one of Trump's biggest advisors handed to him was the director of health? Wasn't that Fauci?
Mm-hmm.
Fauci. And they would say to him, well, Dr. Fauci has been with us for over 40 years. He's the highest paid federal employee in our whole system. He's trusted by everybody. That's the kind of resume they dropped in Trump's lap. And Trump probably figured, well, he's a big resume guy. He looked like he had all the qualifications. I don't know Fauci, but if you guys look at this resume, magnificent. He trusted him, and he shouldn't have.
How many people do you know that have faked a resume? I have a very good, it was a good Democrat friend. They got into the business in New York. That's where they made their debut in radio, based on a lie. The whole resume was bogus. So anytime I read anything that they do these days, I'm going like, what a freaking idiot. But, you can't trust what you see. That's why you've got to know people that know this person. And, of course, you can't give references anymore because you can get sued over that. So, he had to trust what he was handed, and it was a trap.
Yeah, that's true. Who's working in health and in government? It's Mehmet Oz, Dr. Oz.
Yes, I saw that the other day.
He talked about recently, I guess last week, about his mission. Listen.
My mission is to protect the most vulnerable, because I'll tell you, as a heart surgeon, the most expensive care is bad care. You got to pay the person who's doing a bad job. You got to pay someone else who's capable to fix the problem, and you got to pay for the complications. And there's so many things we can do to improve care in America. And folks watch this program are probably witnessing and pretty good testimonials out there about what has been done in the past that's not worked well. But here's the good news. We can empower beneficiaries, give you tools, and that's coming down the pike at you. We can make sure providers have better opportunities and incentivize them to do the right thing, because oftentimes in CMS we've unfortunately gotten folks to do things wrong because we pay them for doing things incorrectly. But right now my main focus, without any question, is to wage a war on fraud, waste, and abuse. Okay. Because that's what's required. All hands on deck. It's a massive issue. Hundreds of billions of dollars potentially out there. Not all of it's going to be collected at once, but we've got a war room right now focused very much on things that are going to really bother you. If you thought USAID was a problem, some of the issues that we're discovering, some of the things that CMS has been funding through Medicare and Medicaid and the exchanges will bring a little shiver to you.
It's amazing. That's Dr. Oz talking about. I was listening to him talk about Medicare and Medicaid, and what I found is interesting. I got to lose a few pounds. When you get older, believe me, if gaining weight were an Olympic, an Olympic game, I would probably be gold. It happens when you get older. You're less active. You put some pounds on. So I looked into this Septitude, maybe the Wegovy and all these different injectables, and apparently they've had some success with it. I don't know whether you've looked into it at all or seen it, but it's interesting. They have the commercials on TV. Lose up to 35% of your body weight in 20 minutes with this new. No, they don't say 20 minutes, but it's really quick and it's effective. And they imply that it's a weight loss program in a needle, in an injection. And apparently they've had some success. So I looked into it. My doctor said, sure, you can try it. He wanted to do all my blood work. Said, you can try it. It won't hurt you. So I'm older. I have Medicare. And you would think that Medicare would pay for it because a healthier me, a thinner me, would be a healthier me, right? That would be the goal. If the goal was to get me into a better physical shape, then they would cover this medication. They don't cover weight loss medications. Medicare doesn't. So now the option is I pay like $500 a month for this stuff, or I don't get it at all. And by the way, it just sent me back to my old low carb diet. Which is fine, but I just thought it was interesting, and it was sold very well. Like, it's really effective. You should try this, and it's not going to hurt you because it doesn't go after your heart or your lungs, or it does something different. And you would have thought that if these different insurances like Medicare really cared about your well-being, they would definitely cover weight loss. Then it made me think, wait a second, do they want me to die quicker? Do they want me off the rolls ASAP? Is that the goal of these different operations? It just gave me pause, So, and then I thought, you probably thought the same thing, Bill. They're talking about taking the commercials, making it illegal for the pharmaceuticals to advertise on television their products. If they do that, I'll bet you 2/3 of the commercials on television will disappear. All these different drugs that we've never heard about. When I was a kid, by the way, you didn't know what these different drugs were. The only guy who could pronounce the damn drug was the doctor in his office. We have some, you got to try this famistram over here. It's terrific. It'll make your hair grow. But up until you talk to the doctor, you never heard of it. Now, you go on TV and they advertise it like it's McDonald's.
Well, there used to be cigarette advertising all the time. And then finally one day they said, we got to take it away. Cigarette smoking hasn't gone away. Cancer hasn't gone down from it.
Right.
It stayed the same. Tobacco has been a part of our life and history all along. But then big companies got a hold of it. There's chemicals in it. The pharmaceutical, industry, they don't make money on something they can't patent and own. So they got to come up with a chemical solution, because if you believe in God or a higher power, then that higher power, God, gave us everything we needed in life to get along, live long, be healthy, and there's probably things we don't know. But what happens is they come in here and they're going, well, that plant does this. How do we can't own that plant, but we can own these chemicals and make it do kind of what that is and say, this is the way to go. So it's, they'll keep you alive long enough to make the money from you. And if they can sit there and say, Okay, you got a different problem now. We have a drug for that too.
Whenever
The
you see
milk
those
is going
people in the Wegovy commercial, which everybody has seen by now, where you see all those people walk out into the square, march down the street, put down their tools and join the rest of the group in the street, and there's hundreds of people. Understand those are the richest people in town because they're spending about between $500 and $1,000 a month on their medicine, unless they have great insurance. And I'm sure
it's gotten worse. I think most people will realize that if they sat there and looked at there's people giving up medicines right now because, and they want to blame this on Trump, but the Affordable Care Act, things started kicking in and coming to their fruition in the summer of last year, and certain people started to say, wait a minute, come the first of the year, this crap is going to start costing, more money. And now some of these pharmaceuticals said, oh, here's a coupon. You can get it for this. But there's so many hoops you got to jump, that you can't. And I'm like going, the healthcare system is a disaster. But these drug companies, they still make money. And, there's a big problem here.
They got drugs for everything now. We're turning into a really a drug society. I mean,
we're hooked on healthcare.
They got drugs that'll make guys impotent, and they've got drugs that'll make guys 180 degrees. If you know what I'm saying, it'll, it's amazing. It's all done with the magic of pharmaceuticals. What was there? There used to be a slogan. I can't think of it. It was about. Through modern chemistry, there was a slogan when I was a kid, and I can only think of a little bit of it. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I'm looking at the clock on the wall. We promised ourselves a slightly shorter show.
Did we do it?
No, we actually went over by about a half an hour, but that's okay. That's okay because we had a lot of fun today. It was a fun show. Our update shows really are a little different than our regular shows in that we give ourselves the flexibility to just ramble on about stuff.
Yeah. I was going to mention just a litany of conspiracies out there, but maybe we don't have time for that. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think that a litany of conspiracy will take us into a regular length show, and is that what we want? I mean, we can do it Monday, can't we?
Yeah, we could do it Monday. But there are conspiracies out there that, you would be surprised.
No, I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't. I really wouldn't be surprised. There's a background to the term conspiracy theory. I think it goes back to, would you believe, of all places, the New York Times during an article. Someone used the term, it was a conspiracy theory about something about 40 years ago. Maybe it was during the Kennedy assassination. That's what it was. It was during the Kennedy assassination when people started to put the grassy knoll theory out there. And suddenly that whole thing became a conspiracy theory. And the term caught. It took root. And now we use it in our everyday lexicon,
But what's happening is they've taken conspiracies, without going into the litany of them I have here, and they'll take something and do kind of a reverse thing. They want to create a story, so they create a conspiracy theory to generate a narrative that becomes a story that takes hold. How many times have you heard things that Trump's doing this and Trump's doing that, and it turns out he's not doing it at all, because at the root of it was a conspiracy theory that was planted out there just to get, people arms cackled up and ready to fight. They want to divide us.
Every week they do that with Trump. Every week.
Every day.
I will see him in a press conference. The other day he said, and it was like off the cuff, and it was supposed to be humor. And he was talking about the conclave, and he said, heck, I'd like to be Pope. Now, I understand, I think Trump is Presbyterian, so he couldn't be Pope if he wanted to be. But he threw it out there like, no, I'd like to be Pope. Well, suddenly I saw headlines during the week. Trump says that the ultimate job would be Pope. And I thought, oh, come on. Doesn't anybody in the media do any serious investigating anymore, or are you just a bunch of morons?
Mm.
And then I thought for myself, I think I got the answer to that. Go ahead.
I think Trump does, though, every once in a while throw out a zing because he knows they're going to do it, because it has a certain ripple effect both ways. It exposes some people, that you see that, and it gets them off base when he's going, let's throw this out here. They'll go that way. We're going this way. Because he's got to be a king of deception to get what he wants to get done, because they're listening to every word to go, okay, what's he going to do next so we can trip it up?
Do you know what we forgot to do, Bill?
What's that?
Guess
Side coffee.
Guess what? Yeah. Only reason why I noticed that we forgot to do the commercial is I looked over to the side here and I saw a group of grown men weeping in the corner, weeping in their guitars. Juan Jose and the Border Crossers, they're over there. Relax, guys. You're going to get your moment. I almost forgot. But we should remind you can get Right Side Coffee at rightsideshop.com, rightsideshop.com. It's a delicious medium blend roast and medium decaf roast that you will love, and you'll be a regular once you try it. Jim and Bill's Right Side Coffee, only available at rightsideshop.com, rightsideshop.com, or you can go to our website. There's a little button on it. You just press the button, it'll take you right to it. And now, without any further ado, guys, wipe your tears. It's your turn.
Wake up on the right side with Right Side Coffee.
Wake up on the right side with Right Side Coffee. Bill, I think now, honestly we can put a fork in this one for the time being. We're done. Anything else you want to add?
Are you saying the show's a turkey?
No, I would never. I would never say that. Other people might say that, but
no, I think they would say it's a good show.
Hey, we're in the top 1%, Bill.
That's right.
A lot of shows.
Yeah, I mean, Pete Spot said that we are. They rated us as one of the top political shows to listen to.
By the way,
1%.
That was unsolicited. We didn't pay anything for them to say that.
No, they came out of the blue, contacted us, and we got a nice little, I'm sure it was, generated by their little art department. There, here, put this emblem on your website, but it does have their name on it. So, I thought, yeah, you know what, share that. I don't like to pound my chest and brag, but I thought.
I do.
Yeah, well, given all the crap that we've gone through, I just want you to know, I want you to know that this is not really an accolade to us. It's an accolade to you that you chose us.
Pounding your chest, it worked very well for Tarzan. You know that. Just ask Jane.
Jane might have a different opinion. I don't know. When he was swinging through the trees.
That's true.
There wasn't. I guess it depends on how you look.
He was making a
it was
mess.
Either a good look or a bad look.
He was making a mess of the neighborhood. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, he really was. Tarzan swing, Tarzan fall, and it's time for me to say it's time to go. So, without further ado, hasta la vista, baby. We're out of here.
This is CRN America.